Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. Forcing the Wanda to marry me, practicing the method of swallowing the stars. Chapter 1. 2008, Los Angeles. Evening. Batman filming set. Click. With the director's voice, today's shooting work came to an end. A woman wearing a tight suit and an eye patch walked quickly outside the photography scene. It's Annie who plays Catwoman. After going out, Annie looked around, seemingly looking for something. Until she saw a commercial vehicle parked on the roadside, her eyes lit up. Entering the car, Annie's eyes fell on a handsome young man in the back seat, and she spoke in a coquettish tone. "My dear, you haven't come to see me for a long time. Annie, you also know that it is not an easy task to maintain the normal operation of the company." With that said, Shumo handed her the flowers in his hand. With the flowers in hand, all the resentment in Annie's heart disappeared instantly. With a sweet smile on her face, she sat down in Shumo's arms. "Thank you, I like it very much." Shumo hugged the other party's slender waist. The front and rear of the car are separated and soundproofing materials are laid, so the driver cannot see the scene behind. As Shumo reached out and pressed a button next to him, the car slowly started. "Hey, wait a minute, I haven't changed my clothes yet." Because she knew in advance that Shumo was coming, Annie couldn't wait to get to the car after the filming, wearing the same Catwoman costume she wore during the filming. "No, what I want is Catwoman." Host detected. System binding. A mechanical sound suddenly appeared in Shumo's mind. Holy shit. With his eyes closed, Shumo suddenly opened his eyes and let out an exclamation. After Anne heard this, she raised her head and looked over with doubtful eyes. "Sorry, keep going." After comforting the other party, Shumo's expression returned to normal, but he couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. After waiting for 20 years, Goldfinger finally arrived. That's right, Shumo came through time. To be precise, it is reincarnation. He was born in a Chinese-American family in New York. He thought he was reborn in the United States in the 1990s, but it wasn't until he saw Stark Industries on TV that he realized that he was reborn in the world of Marvel. It's that villain who keeps popping up and wants to destroy the entire human world at every turn. And each of these villains is stronger than the last. Not to mention Thanos, the director of the Family Planning Commission in the universe who deliberately wants to wipe out half of the population in the universe and the Celestials sleeping in the center of the Earth. There are countless villains native to Earth alone, and they want to destroy all mankind at every turn. Just like the Scene Man Magneto. There are not only superheroes in this world, but there are also mutants, including the Mutant Academy led by Professor X and the Brotherhood established by Lao Wan. The only good news is, judging from the information collected over the years, this world belongs to the movie universe. Compared to the comic universe, the movie universe is undoubtedly much safer. His parents run a medium-sized film and television company. However, they both passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. After taking over the film and television company left by his parents, Shumo relied on the memories of his previous life to produce a series of film and television masterpieces, making a lot of money. The money is then invested. Today, he can be regarded as one of the richest men in the United States. Holding back his excitement, he communicated with the system in his mind. After a few minutes, he understood. Although the system is now bound, it has not been activated yet. If you want to activate it, you need to get married as soon as possible, and the stronger the potential or strength of the marriage partner, the better the novice rewards you will get after activation. Marry a strong woman. In an instant, names appeared in Shumo's mind one by one. There are many strong women in the Marvel Universe, but there are only a few in the first echelon. In the end, there were only 4 names left in his mind. Ancient One Mage, Phoenix Girl, Scarlet Witch, Captain Marvel. The strength of these 4 people is undoubtedly the strongest 4 on Earth. Since the rewards fluctuate, Shumo naturally strives to obtain the highest level of rewards. The first is the Ancient One Mage. As the Supreme Mage, her strength is unquestionable. If she had not died, there would be no chance that Thanos would snap his fingers. His fingers were all broken off. It's a pity that, let's not talk about the other party's age, whether Shumo can accept it. Even if he can accept it, it must be agreed by the other party. If he really dares to bring it up in front of the Ancient One Mage, even with the Ancient One mage's self-cultivation, he may not be able to help but destroy his humanity. This is a direct pass. Phoenix Girl, according to the original plotline, should have died in the hands of Wolverine at this time, but this is an integrated world, Shumo is not sure. But even if he didn't die, he wouldn't have chosen this. After all, the other party has no way to control the energy in her body, and staying by her side is like holding a time bomb. You never know if one day you lose control and you will be affected. He was directly crushed into dregs. Same pass. All that's left is Wanda and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel doesn't know where in the universe he is as Superman right now. Pass. In the end, the only one left to choose was Wanda. The Scarlet Witch, who has fully awakened origin magic power, is undoubtedly the ceiling of combat power in the Marvel world. Even before becoming the Scarlet Witch, she could tear apart Thanos with her bare hands. If Thanos had turned into a witch before Thanos arrived, I'm afraid Thanos would have turned into a gem delivery boy, the kind who would go offline as soon as he placed an order. At this point in time, brother and sister Pietro and Wanda are still two ordinary people living in Sokovia, a small country in Western Europe. Relying on the money ability, it is very simple to control the opponent. This is undoubtedly the most suitable choice. After making the decision, Shumo let out a sigh of relief. He took the mobile phone aside, found a number and dialed it. Boss, a woman's sweet voice came from the phone. Avril, ask Sauron and the others to gather at the stronghold tomorrow morning. Okay, boss. Secretary Avril agreed, and then continued to speak. Boss, currently all assets in the United States, except for the stocks of film and television companies and Stark Group, have basically been sold off. There is also your proposal to acquire companies in China. I have sent information about some large companies in China to your email. If you have time, you can take a look. Okay, got it. Shumo nodded and hung up the phone. In the Marvel world, without special abilities, staying in the United States is undoubtedly a stupid choice. After all, almost all major events in this world happen here, especially New York, which is the center of the universe and is an area where events occur frequently. Of course Shumo wanted to leave a long time ago. It's a pity that my parents insisted on staying here before. I can't tell them that there will be an alien invasion here in a few years. I'm afraid if they really say this, their first thought is not to agree or disagree, but to find a reliable mental hospital for themselves. And he couldn't abandon the two of them. However, after the death of his two elders, Shumo took advantage of the stable period of several years to make a fortune. As Tony became Iron Man, major events in the Marvel Universe officially kicked off, and he officially launched his plan to leave the United States. And if we talk about the safest place in the world, then it must be China. Except for the fact that Thanos snaps his fingers and there is no way to avoid it, hiding in China is still safe. After hanging up the phone, Shumo threw the phone aside and fell into deep thought. After the system is activated, I also need to reformulate my future plans. It wasn't until more than 20 minutes later that Shumo, who was thinking, felt a numbness in his lower back. Hiss. 3 days later, located in an estate on the banks of the Hudson River. A helicopter landed slowly. A moment later, a blindfolded figure was taken off the helicopter by several female mercenaries holding firearms. Sauron, who took the lead, walked to Shumo who was standing aside. Boss, we brought him back. Shumo nodded, then took the lead and walked towards the villa. After a few minutes, in a certain room in the villa, two female mercenaries took off the hood on Wanda's face. Wanda looked at the surrounding environment with a horrified expression, and finally her eyes fell on Shumo. Who are you and what are you going to do? Okay, you go down first. Without answering the other party in a hurry, Shumo first ordered the two female mercenaries to leave, and then looked up and down at Wanda opposite. Wanda's appearance is very similar to Elizabeth Olsen's seen in the previous movie. The only difference is that the woman in front of her looks younger and more beautiful. After all, according to time, Wanda has just turned 18. Wanda Maximoff was born in Sokovia, Western Europe. When she was 8 years old, her parents were killed in a terrorist attack, leaving only two siblings. Her elder brother Pietro Maximoff. After hearing Shumo read out all her resume, the look on Wanda's face changed. Then he asked with a forced composure on his face. What is your purpose in tying me here? Shumo closed the document in his hand and looked at the other party with a smile on his face. Ms. Wanda, I hope you understand that I sent someone to bring you here without any malicious intent. No malice. A mocking smile appeared on Wanda's face. Then he shook the rope that tied him tightly. Is this what you mean by no malice? After sighing, Shumo did not answer the question, but took out a dagger and stepped forward to cut the rope on Wanda's body. Wanda, who has no ability awakening, is just an ordinary person. Shumo was not worried about the threat the other party would pose to him. Actually, I brought you here just to make a deal with you. Trade. Wanda rubbed her sore arms and looked at Shumo warily. That's right. Shumo nodded. I also know something about your situation in Sokovia. You work in a cafe, and Pietro delivers food in a pizza shop. The combined monthly living expenses of the two of you does not exceed 2,000 euros. Overall, it seems that your life is not very good. Quote. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. Wanda opened her mouth to retort. Shumo glanced at her and continued. As for the content of our transaction, it is very simple. If you marry me, your brother Pietro will get enough wealth for his happy life. Of course, you can also refuse. But in that case, I can't guarantee the safety of you two. Wanda's expression changed when she heard Shumo's words, which were tantamount to threats. You are shameless. Seeing the angry expression on the other side, Shumo shrugged indifferently. Whatever you think, Shumo still had some understanding of Wanda's character. If she was the only one left now, things would be more difficult to handle. According to the character of the other party, I am afraid that even if he dies, he may not agree to the conditions he proposed. But it is a pity that now she still has Pietro as a relative. Relatives are her weakness. Of course, the method did seem a bit despicable, but he didn't care. Let's activate the system first. Ms. Wanda, I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it. I hope you can think about it carefully. One of your decisions may change the lives of both of you, brother and sister. After saying that, Shumo stopped talking and the old man leaned back on the chair. For him, this is already the most appropriate way. After all, he can't slowly develop feelings for the other person. Let's not talk about whether he has the time. Even if he does, who knows whether he is the one the other party likes. He is not Long Aocean, he has an aura of wisdom, and all women will throw themselves into his arms without hesitation after seeing him. If the other person doesn't like her, I can't keep spending time with her. He doesn't have that time. If nothing else, there are still only 10 years until Thanos snaps his fingers. Without understanding the system function, he was not sure whether he could improve enough to fight against the opponent during this period of time. Naturally, the sooner you activate it, the better. Besides, this is not necessarily harmful to Wanda. If we look at her original life trajectory, she is simply a template for the Lonely Star. After feeling that the time was almost up, Shumo sat up straight and stared at the other person closely. How about it, Ms. Wanda, please tell me your final choice. Wanda raised her head and looked at Shumo opposite him angrily. Why does it have to be me? You don't need to know this. Regarding the system, Shumo didn't plan to tell anyone. Only what no one knew could be called a secret. Hearing his answer, Wanda let out a sigh of relief. I promise you, but you have to keep your promise and let Peter go. In the end, she had to succumb to the other party's power. Judging from what he just experienced, the other party should be a powerful person. As for her and Pietro, two orphans, how could they fight with each other? In today's society, having money really means doing whatever you want. If she resists, the final outcome is likely to be that Pietro and the two of them will disappear from this world inexplicably. If she was alone, she might choose to fight to the death, but with Pietro, she could only choose to surrender. Pietro is her only family now. You can rest assured that I always keep my word, and I will never go back on what I promise. Seeing that the other party agreed, Shumo quickly promised. That afternoon, Pietro was also brought here. In the living room of the villa, Pietro looked at Wanda, who was wearing a luxurious wedding dress, with a ghostly expression on his face. Wardfa, are you kidding me? He couldn't imagine that Wanda, who had never had any contact with men, suddenly told him that she wanted to get married, and the wedding was scheduled for tomorrow. What's even more exaggerated is that the other party is a rich man in the United States, more than 2,000 kilometers away from them. After entering the manor just now, if he hadn't been led by a servant, he might have gotten lost in this huge manor. He pinched his arm hard. After confirming that he was not dreaming, the expression on Pietro's face became very wonderful. Wanda, who was depressed before and was trying on wedding dresses, had a smile on her face after seeing Peter. Because I haven't made a decision before, I'm just telling you now. This is the reason they had already thought of. She knew Pietro's character very well. If he knew the truth, it would make things worse in the end, so it was better to hide it from him. But, how do you two know each other when we are so far apart? Peter still felt a little unbelievable. Of course. Wanda, who had already thought of the reason, was just about to explain to the other party when Shumo walked in from the door. Seeing Pietro standing next to Wanda, a smile appeared on his face. Hello, you are Wanda's brother Pete. Who are you? I am Wanda's boyfriend Shumo, you can call me Shu. Looking at the tall, handsome, gentle Shumo opposite him, Pietro suddenly became a little embarrassed. Living at the bottom of society for so many years has made him a little overwhelmed. After a long time, he slowly raised his right hand. Hello. Half an hour later, the facts before him forced Pietro to accept this reality. When he heard Wanda tell him the news on the phone, he thought that Wanda must have been deceived by some fool, and wanted to come over as soon as possible to teach him a lesson. But now, he has long expelled this idea from his mind. Shumo opposite was not only young and handsome, but also looked like a rich man. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't seem like you have any motive to deceive Wanda. Scammers only cheat money. In terms of money, it is obviously impossible. If it was a lie, the other party wouldn't have to engage in such a big battle. Just now in the manor, he had already seen the wedding scene being decorated. If you have this kind of money, you can't find any kind of beautiful woman. The next morning, the grand wedding was held in the manor. Wanda, wearing a white wedding dress, walked on the red carpet that was hundreds of meters long. Her mind went blank. Until this moment, she still felt like she was dreaming. Did you just get married to someone you met for less than 2 days? He turned around and glanced at Shumo. I have to admit that, regardless of his character, he is indeed a suitable marriage partner. Young, handsome and rich. What a pity he is a scumbag. Wanda sighed. Now, she has no choice but to accept her fate. Because both parents have passed away, the whole process has been simplified a lot. After taking the oath and exchanging rings, the next step is the kiss. Looking at Shumo who was gradually approaching, Wanda's heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and she held the bouquet in her hands tightly. After Shumo kissed briefly, the wedding process was officially completed. Hey, Shu, I was a little confused before about what made you eager to enter the tomb of love. Until I saw this beautiful lady next to you, it seemed that your decision was not wrong. Tony escaped from the crowd with champagne in hand. No way, some time ago, he said that classic sentence in public. I am Iron Man. Since then, wherever he goes, he will become the center of attention. As for why he appeared at Shumo's wedding, when Tony announced the closure of the Stark Group's Weapons Research and Development Department, Shumo took advantage of the low price to buy up the shares of the Stark Group. After Obadiah, the number 2 man in the Stark Group, went to see God, he once again acquired a large number of shares in Stark Industries from the other party's family. This also leads to, he directly holds 30% of the shares of Stark Industries, becoming the second largest shareholder after Tony with 39%. Moreover, before they became shareholders of the Stark Group, the two of them seemed to have similar interests. They were both keen on collecting stamps, and almost all the well-known models and celebrities in the United States were captured by the two of them. After becoming shareholders, the two hit it off and quickly became close friends. Wanda next to Shumo showed a strange light in her eyes after seeing Tony. Noticed Wanda's gaze. Tony had a look of confusion on his face. I'm sorry, have we met? Shumo also noticed Wanda's expression at this time, and his expression changed. Obviously, Wanda's parents were killed by weapons manufactured by the Stark Group. She would naturally not feel good about Tony, the current owner of the Stark Group. Immediately, he quickly stepped forward to hold her left hand and comforted her. Then he explained to Tony. Of course not, believe me, she just remembered some bad memories. But now is obviously not a good time to explain this. After a few words of prevarication, Shumo quickly pulled Wanda and walked in another direction. He didn't want any accidents to happen before activating the system. Therefore, it is better to keep Wanda away from each other now. Wanda obeyed and was led away by Shumo's hand. She looked up at Shumo's side face. It seems like you know each other very well. Well, you should know that I have a stake in Stark Industries. Of course, I acquired it after the other party closed its weapons department. Wanda nodded and said nothing more. Last night, of course, someone gave her a general introduction to Shumo's information. She knew this very well. After the two left, Tony looked at his back in the distance and shrugged his shoulders. Bad memories. After muttering something, Tony quickly put the matter behind him, looked at a tall figure in the distance, and approached him confidently. Hi Jenna. Night. In the wedding room on the top floor of the villa. Wanda sat on the $1 million mattress with a nervous look on her face. With a squeak sound, the door opened. Shumo looked at Wanda, who was unconsciously rubbing her wedding dress with her hands. You seem nervous. Wanda had a panic look on her face. Don't worry, I'll be gentler. After comforting the other person, Shumo kissed him directly. Along with a pool of blood on the sheets, the system's voice sounded in his mind. Ding, the host is married, the devouring exchange system has been activated, and the devouring starry sky method has been obtained. The marriage partner is bound to Wanda and activates the passive, eternal and only. In an instant, memories poured into his mind one after another. An hour later, Shumo glanced at Wanda next to him, who had fallen into a deep sleep due to fatigue. Silently, he began to sort out the information in his mind. At this time, various cultivation methods and secret techniques from the devouring starry sky world have appeared in my mind, from gene energy cultivation method, and the gods telekinesis master basics, to 9 tribulations secret code, and broken East River, Liyuan Shu, all-encompassing. He is naturally no stranger to the cultivation system in this world. The training levels start from the apprentice level, followed by planet level, star level, universe level. Not to mention how strong it is, the peak basic punching power of the apprentice level alone can be close to 1,000 tons. A single strike can destroy a building dozens of stories high. Shumo suppressed the excitement in his heart and started communicating with the system in his mind. After a moment, he took a deep breath, and the corners of his mouth could not be restrained from rising. Then he looked at the passive skill. The Eternal One, Wanda, who activates the system with the host, will be the only existence in the multi-universe, and including the host, the timeline of their life trajectories is frozen and no one can change it. Combining the system's explanation, Shumo also understood the role of this skill. Simply put, this skill has two functions. The first is that my wife Wanda has become the only one in the universe. This made Shumo very satisfied. The particularity of the Marvel world means that there are countless multi-universes in this world, and almost every universe has the same people, but their life trajectories are slightly different. Just like there will be a Shumo and Wanda in every multi-universe. Shumo didn't care. Although Shumo in other universes looked the same as him, he was not the same person after all. But Wanda is different. This is her wife. If Wanda in the multi-universe marries someone else and has children, she will always feel as if she has been cheated. The system's ability can prevent this situation from happening. Another effect of this passivity is that the life trajectories of the two of them cannot be changed. No one can reach their past timelines through time and space, change their life trajectories or cause harm to them. This also avoids the hidden danger of someone traveling through time and space to a time when they were weak and killing them directly. It can be said that this passive ability has almost solved all his worries. The function of the system is very simple. As long as you kill the villain, you can get points, and you can exchange the points for various items in the system mall. Would you like to open the novice gift pack? The system's voice sounded in Shumo's mind again. Open. Shumo couldn't wait to recite silently. He did not hesitate to use threats and inducements to marry Wanda just for this gift package. According to the potential of Wanda's origin magic power, the rewards he received should be considered high level. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Star Tower enhancement. Hearing the sound of the system, Shumo's face was stunned for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. This is a famous treasure in that world, and it is also one of the most powerful treasures in the later period of City Lord Luo. In front of Shumo's eyes, a compact 9-story black tower appeared instantly. After the tower appeared, it flashed and disappeared between his eyebrows. Information about the Star Tower instantly appeared in his mind. Star Tower Enhanced. It integrates defense, soul defense, suppression, attack and palace. The main body is 100 million light-years high, and the file size can be changed at will. The large one can be tens of billions of light-years long, and the small one can be turned into dust particles. Countless treasures are nurtured inside. The ceiling stars, each star is as file-sized as a star, and the enemy cannot escape from it. 100 million light-years. If I remember correctly, the original height of the Star Tower was only 9 light-years, and the Seal of Stars was only a valuable treasure. The currently strengthened Star Tower is not only larger in size, but all the ceiling stars inside have also been upgraded to treasures. Shumo guessed that the enhanced capabilities should be more than that. The level of the Star Tower has probably surpassed the level of God King level treasures. However, the rest of the aspects need to be fully controlled before you can understand them. It's a pity that Shumo is still far from being able to drive it now. Even if it is a preliminary drive, it must reach the realm of the Realm Lord. But now the Star Tower is not completely useless. You know, in this world, there are many mutants who can read and modify other people's memories. As a treasure with a soul defense function, there is a Star Tower guarding the Sea of Consciousness. Shumo does not have to worry about his memory being read and modified by those mutants. To put it simply, the rewarded Star Tower can be regarded as the Plus Pro Max Ultra S version of the Star Tower. Just as Shumo was shocked by this reward, the system's voice sounded in his mind again. Ding! The system mall has been activated. Congratulations to the host for earning 1,000 points. With a thought in his heart, an exchange list that only he could see appeared in front of him. After a casual glance, Shumo found that it contained everything. A-level flying knife, required points, 10 points. Infinite bullet Barrett, required points, 500 points. Black God set, required points, 60,000 points. Telepathy, mutant ability, required points, 80,000 points. Magnetic field control, mutant ability, points required, 80,000 points. Tiansuo, 3rd level psychokinesis weapon, required points, 1 million points. Splitting divine weapon, one of the 9 divine weapons of the controller, required points, 50 million points. Shumo continued to scroll down the list. The various treasures and abilities that appeared behind made him even more excited. Black Prison Tower, Colorful Aurora Lake, Chaos Golden Wings, Phoenix Power, Origin Magic Power. However, the series of zeros behind the price also made him calm down quickly. Moreover, he also found the Star Tower inside. Star Tower, the only one, God King level weapon, required points, 1,000 trillion points. Seeing this huge number, Shumo was a little dizzy. Although I don't know how many points I will get after killing the villain, but thinking about it, it will definitely not be an easy task to collect these points. From this point of view, I really made a lot of money. Shumo browsed the redemption list for more than half an hour. He was dazzled by what he saw inside. However, he only has 1,000 points gifted by the system, and there is no way to redeem most things. System, the mall only displays things that I can redeem. With an order, the items in the mall disappeared a lot. After browsing again for a while, Shumo's eyes fell on an item in the mall. Super Soldier Serum, a modified version of the same model as Captain America. There is no chance of failure. After use, it will increase the physical fitness to the human limit within a week. I want to practice those skills in my mind. The minimum requirement is to reach the level of a quasi-martial artist. That is to say, the punching force exceeds 900 kilograms and the speed reaches 25 meters s. Different from the body modified by the RR virus in that world, in this world, wanting to exercise to this extent on your own is tantamount to wishful thinking. And this Super Soldier Serum can help him directly reach this level. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the Super Warrior Serum, which consumes 1,000 points. As the system finished speaking, a silver syringe appeared in Shumo's hand. Glancing at Wanda, who was still sleeping next to him, Shumo got up and walked out of the bedroom. In the gym on the 2nd floor of the villa, Shumo sat cross-legged on the ground, shirtless. Take a deep breath and stick the syringe in your hand on your arm. As the liquid inside was injected into the body, Shumo's muscles tightened suddenly, and there was a sharp pain in the body, but everything was within the tolerable range. Until more than half an hour later. As the pain gradually faded, Shumo relaxed his clenched teeth and slowly opened his eyes. He looked down at his naked upper body. A figure like a bodybuilder comes into view. The 8-pack abs are neatly arranged on both sides of the abdomen. When he came to the mirror and looked at the perfect figure in the mirror, Shumo couldn't believe it. In the past, although he exercised regularly, his figure could only be considered as not thin. There is no comparison with the streamlined muscles all over his body now. And compared to before, his skin has become several degrees whiter, and it seems that even his original height of about 1.8 meters has grown by a few centimeters. His body felt like he had endless power. System, open the properties panel. In an instant, a curtain of light that only he could see appeared in front of him. Looking up. Name, Shumo. Age, 20 years old. Strength, 600 kilograms. Speed, 20 meters s. Ability, none. Points, 0. Looking at the series of values on the attribute panel, Shumo was speechless. It is indeed a super soldier serum. It has reached this level just after using it. You must know that this improved serum, in order to increase safety, does not exert its efficacy all at once. In addition to the explosive increase to a certain level after the initial injection, it will gradually increase in a gentle manner over the course of a week. Enhance physical fitness. I wonder where it will be in a week. There was a hint of longing in Shumo's eyes. But thinking about it, after absorbing all the effects of the medicine, it will definitely be no problem to reach the level of a junior warrior. At that time, he can start cultivating his genetic power. Close the system panel. Shumo got up and went to the bathroom of the gym. After just being injected with the super soldier serum, he was in great pain, causing him to sweat non-stop. At this time, his whole body looked extremely embarrassed. While washing, he began to think. The way the system earns points is by killing villains. If this is the case, his previous plan to return to China is obviously not suitable. When it comes to villains, Free America has more abundant production. Moreover, he has already inquired about the system. These villains do not necessarily have to be killed by themselves. If you do it indirectly, you will also get points. However, the points earned will be reduced by some. In this case, it would be necessary for him to gather some people and establish a force. This can maximize the speed of earning points. He does have some loyal mercenaries in his hands, all of whom he has collected over the years and retired from various special forces. In the mall, except for the super soldier serum, there are many ways to elevate a person to the level of a quasi-martial artist. Among them, the most point-saving way is to slowly increase the body's strength and speed by eating the meat of ferocious beasts. The meat of ferocious beasts is very cheap. 1 point can be exchanged for 30 kilograms. Just right for these retired soldiers. However, he must find a way to ensure that the other party will not betray him after improving his strength. Although these people are now very loyal to themselves. But after the strength increases to a certain level, descent is inevitable. In addition, Shumo also saw an ability in the system mall. Dimension teleportation. You can open a portal to other universes and travel through other universes. With this ability, he doesn't have to worry about the source of points. In countless multi-universes, the number of villains is almost endless. He can even establish forces in various universes to help himself earn points. Unfortunately, redeeming this ability requires a full 100 million points. It may not be easy to collect so many points. After making the next plan, Shumo closed his eyes. He selected from the vast number of exercises in his mind. He planned to choose a secret method to increase the amplitude of force. Fortunately, these exercises are like balls of light, floating in the space of consciousness. Only when Shumo checks it will he receive the information about the exercises. Otherwise, these massive amounts of information would have already overwhelmed his mind. 10 minutes later, he selected a sword technique called Thunder Knife. It is said to be a sword technique, but it is actually a force-generating technique. Thunder Sword is included in 9 layers of Thunder Sword. After being improved, it was divided into 36 floors. With each level of cultivation, the strength can be doubled when exerting force. After completing the training, you can exert 36 times the original power. In other words, if his current strength of 600 kilograms reaches the first level, he can exert double strength, that is, 1200 kilograms. If all 36 layers are practiced, the power can reach 21,600 kilograms. That's what skills are for. And this skill is not limited to knife skills and attacks. Regardless of the force exerted by any part of the body, this technique can be used to increase the force. There was no sword at the moment, so Shumo started practicing with the sword. This practice lasted a whole night. It's too difficult. Looking at the glimmer of light in the sky outside the window, Shumo couldn't help but sigh. After a night of practice, I still couldn't get into the first level of Thunder Knife. But he was not discouraged. After all, it was a secret technique that could double his strength. If he could practice it in one night, he would not believe it. He stood up and moved his body. Perhaps because of the super soldier serum, Shumo still felt energetic despite not sleeping all night. An hour later, in the restaurant, the dining table is filled with huge amounts of various dishes. Wanda looked at the dozens of kinds of breakfast on the table with a surprised look. Because I don't know your taste, I asked the kitchen to make some of everything. Noticing the other person's expression, Shumo put down the milk and explained. After Wanda heard this, a touch of emotion flashed in her eyes, but thinking of the other person's madness last night and the faint pain under her body, this touch quickly disappeared. Hypocritically, with a dull expression, he picked a plate of toast and fried eggs from the table and ate it silently. Shumo pulled the napkin aside and wiped his hands. He took out a bank card from his pocket and handed it to the other party. There are $100 million here. It would be more appropriate for you to hand it over to Pete. After saying that, Shumo turned around and walked outside. When Wanda heard this number, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. Such a big sum of money. She and Peter can only earn less than 2,000 euros a month. This money is almost equivalent to 3,000 years of salary for the two of them. Although she didn't want to admit it, Wanda knew very well that even if she was sold, she wouldn't be worth so much money. The other party was selling her for $100 million. What was she after? Do you really like yourself as a person? How is that possible? Fiercely drive this thought out of your mind. She originally didn't care about money, but Peter was different. With this money, he should be able to live his ideal life. Although Pietro is 10 minutes older than her, due to the differences between men and women. Growing up, she took care of Peter like a sister. Normally, Pete almost obeyed her. I think after Peter gets it, he might be so excited that he can't sleep. Thinking of this, the resentment in her heart about being forced to marry the other party dissipated unconsciously. After hesitating for a moment, she still whispered, "Thanks." Shumo, who was walking towards the door, paused when he heard this, and then continued walking out. It seems that Wanda really cares about her family. Shumo came to this conclusion when he walked out. In a remote town more than 100 kilometers away from New York, Shumo drove to a stop in front of a 2-story villa. The mercenaries he recruited more or less all had criminal records. So Shumo arranged them in this remote place. There are 9 people here in total. Usually, they are on the Golden Triangle side, but this time they came to the United States because of Wanda's incident. In the backyard, Shumo looked at the 9 people standing in a row in front of him, 7 men and 2 women. In the next period of time, you will be arranged to go to Hell's Kitchen and join various gangs. Your goal is to provoke a fight between the various gangs. Upon hearing Shumo's strange request, all 9 people had puzzled expressions on their faces. However, out of good discipline, no one raised any questions. Boss, their 9-man captain, Sauron, stood up. I don't know what level of struggle you were referring to. Shumo heard this and cast an approving glance. That's what I'm going to say next. The more intense the struggle, the better. It's best to fight to the death. Seeing the 9 people nodding, Shumo led everyone to the back of his car and opened the trunk. The trunk was neatly lined with black suitcases. After a while, the suitcases were distributed to the hands of 9 people. Here is your startup capital, $2 million for each person. Remember, at all costs, within a month, at least 1/3 of the scum in Hell's Kitchen will die. Clear. 9 people nodded. Shumo waved his hand. Okay, let's go. The gang you want to join and the fake identity are in your suitcase. Disappeared from sight, Shumo sighed. There are still too many constraints in this world. You know, there are not only the Avengers and the X-Men in this world, but also the Ancient One, the Supreme Mage of Karmatage. If you make things too big, it will easily attract their attention. Otherwise, just plant a few mushroom bombs in your spare time, and you will definitely gain points. With his current financial resources, it is not impossible to get a few mushroom bombs, but if he does so, he is likely to expose himself to the eyes of various forces. For the time being, I can only keep this idea in my heart. Thinking of this, Shumo looked at the dimensional teleportation in the mall again. With this ability, he can go to worlds without high-level combat power and plant one in his little life. Thinking of this, Shumo shook his head and drove away directly. The town is on a mountain road leading to Manhattan. Shumo was driving the car slowly. Because he was going to meet the mercenaries, in order not to attract attention, he just drove an ordinary Ford. The car just passed through a dense forest. A police car rushed out of the dense forest and chased Shumo's car. Finally, when Shumo was driving on a cliffside road, the police car accelerated and suddenly stopped in front of his car. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough and stepped on the brakes in time. Despite this, the car tilted and almost hit the mountain wall on the side. After the police car stopped, the 2 police officers got out of the car. He walked to Shumo's car window. Seeing a Chinese man in the car, the 2 looked at each other, and a hint of arrogance appeared on the middle-aged police officer's face. Get off. A cold look flashed in Shumo's eyes, but he glanced at the holsters hanging on their waists and revealed a harmless smile. Sure, as if he was very satisfied with Shumo's obedience, the middle-aged man took out the ticket from his chest pocket. The speed limit is 80, do you know you are speeding? Shumo's expression changed. Speed here in the United States is generally measured in miles. 80 miles is equivalent to 129 kilometers per hour. You're driving 129 on this mountain road. Are you kidding me? Unless you don't want to die. The young man on the side noticed Shumo's expression and showed a proud smile on his face. Boy, if we say you are speeding, you are speeding. We have the final say on this. Certainly, Shumo nodded indifferently. It's your right to issue a ticket. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to signal the other party to hand over the ticket to him. There is no point in arguing with them here. The other party has clearly seen that they are Chinese, and they can infer from the car that they are not rich. Naturally, they want to take this opportunity to extort money. If you want to take revenge on them, there are plenty of ways to do it after you leave. Seeing that Shumo was not angry, but asked for a ticket calmly, the middle-aged police officer showed a disappointed expression on his face. However, Shumo did not argue. Instead, he happily accepted the ticket, which made the 2 police officers think that he was a soft persimmon. After the 2 looked at each other, the young police officer spoke. Boy, things are not that simple. After saying that, he returned to the police car and got out of the police car. Then he returned to Shumo and showed him the numbers above. See clearly, you just exceeded 100 per hour. According to New York state law, you need to face 30 days in jail and a $600 fine. Of course, you can completely avoid these 30 days of imprisonment. Take into account what the other person does. Shumo laughed out loud. Is it so blatant? But, judging from the skillful process of the 2, it is obvious that this is not the first time they have done this kind of thing. In this case, these 2 people should be considered villains. Thinking of this, he glanced back and forth on the road. It is now noon, and the location of this trail is relatively remote. Few people usually come here, which means that you can only occasionally see a car on the road. Oh, so what do I need to do? He looked at the 2 police officers on the other side with a playful expression. When the middle-aged police officer saw Shumo being so dishonest, he whispered a reminder. How about just $2,000 and pretend this never happened? In his opinion, the other party will definitely agree. After all, no one wants to go to jail and face someone who likes to pick up soap all day long. A month's imprisonment is likely to bring a lifetime of shadow. The fact was exactly as he imagined. Shumo took his wallet directly from the car, took out 2,000 USD and handed it to the other party. At this time, there was a roar of huge amounts from behind. The three of them looked back at the same time. The figure of a black pickup truck appeared in their sight. The pickup truck approached the location of the three people at an extremely fast speed, and then drove past them like lightning. The clothes of the three people were blown by the airflow driven by the car. As the deafening music in the car faded away, the speedometer in the young police officer's hand emitted a beep. The three of them looked at the speedometer. 103. Shumo looked at the two police officers who were standing indifferently with a playful look on his face. Is this considered speeding or dangerous driving? The young police officer sneered and then pressed a button on the speedometer. The above value is cleared directly to 0. What did you say? I didn't see anything. The middle-aged police officer snatched the US dollars from his hand. You fool, be smarter, I have the final say here. After saying that, the two laughed and walked towards the police car behind them. Shumo saw the two people getting into the car, walked to the back of his car expressionlessly, and opened the trunk. Inside lay a black box of huge amounts. Open the box and inside is a light sniper rifle. In this free country, firearms are essential self-defense items when traveling at home. Almost every citizen with a gun license will keep one in the car in case of emergency. Shumo is no exception. Not just sniper rifles, he also had a handgun and a rifle in his vehicle. Shumo quickly assembled the sniper rifle and glanced at the road. There was no sign of other vehicles in sight. He held the assembled sniper rifle and assumed a standard shooting posture. At this time, the police car had just driven less than 300 meters away. For him who has been practicing shooting all year round, this distance almost means he can shoot anywhere. Aiming at the young police officer driving the car through the rear glass, Shumo decisively pulled the trigger in his hand. After a roar of huge amounts, a group of red and white flowers burst out of the police car in the distance, and the car lost control instantly. This road is located on a mountainside, with a mountain wall on one side and a cliff with a drop of 70 to 80 meters on the other side. After the car lost control, it first hit the side of the mountain wall, then rolled several times, and stopped dangerously on the edge of the cliff. At this time, nearly half of the car's body was hanging on the edge of the cliff. It seemed like it could fall at any moment. After Shumo fired, he didn't pay attention to the situation over there. Instead, he quickly disassembled the sniper rifle, put it back into the box, sat back in the driver's seat, and slowly started the car. Half a minute later, the car stopped slowly next to the police car. The young police officer driving in the police car was directly shot in the head by Shumo. Naturally, he could not die anymore. Unexpectedly, the middle-aged police officer remained conscious after experiencing the 720 rotations of the car, and he slowly climbed out of the car. At this time, he had climbed to the middle of the road. The pistol originally hanging on the waist has also disappeared, and was thrown to an unknown place. However, although the other party escaped, his injuries were not minor. Crawling a distance of less than 5 meters seemed to have exhausted the last bit of strength in his body. After escaping from danger, he was lying flat on the ground, breathing heavily with his eyes closed. Until I heard footsteps coming from the side. The middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Shumo, who was smiling like a demon. A look of horror appeared on the man's face. Don't come over here. The man crawled away from Shumo in fear. In his opinion, the man in front of him was simply a devil. Shumo looked at the other party's frightened expression, and a kind smile appeared on his face. Officer, why do you look like this? I'm a good person. Look, if you lie in the middle of the road like this and encounter those speeding vehicles, you will easily get into a traffic accident. I'd better help you back to the car. Saying that, Shumo couldn't help but stretched out his hand to pinch the other person's neck and lifted him up. Then he stuffed the other person back into the police car. For Shumo, whose strength is close to 1 ton, this is not a difficult task. The middle-aged police officer seemed to realize what the other party wanted to do. No, please, let me go, and I will return all the money to you. With trembling hands, the man took out the US dollars he had just extorted from Shumo from his pocket. Under the fear of death, the man's nose and tears all flowed out. Along with the blood stains on his face. Shumo looked disgusted. Shumo did not take the coin handed over by the other party, but took out a lighter and slowly lit the US dollar bill held in the other party's hand. Since you like US dollars so much, I'll save them for you first. After saying something that was incomprehensible to the other party, Shumo helped the other party close the car door. Sorry officer, no parking here. After saying that, Shumo raised his right foot and kicked the car hard. The car, which was originally in danger, tilted and fell off the cliff after receiving this huge force. Boom! Following a violent explosion from below, Shumo slowly returned to his car. As soon as I started the car, 2 reminders came in my mind. Points plus 30. Points plus 40. Sure enough, my guess was correct. As long as you do bad things, you will be judged as a villain by the system. The points obtained from the 2 people are not the same, which is understandable. It seems that the system should determine the points obtained based on the other party's good and evil values. In the villa's gym, Shumo punched the sandbag in front of him. There was a crackling sound. The sandbags exploded directly under his huge amounts of power. After a week, the super soldier serum has been completely absorbed by him. System, open the properties panel. Suddenly a familiar screen appeared in front of him. Name, Shumo. Age, 20 years old. Strength, 4,620 kg. Speed, 68 meters s. Ability, none. Points, 512 points. 4.5 tons of power. Although it is an improved super soldier serum, it only eliminates the dangers of the serum, and the effect is almost the same as the original serum. Looking at it this way, the physical fitness of the US team should also be within this range. As for points, Sauron and the others were already among the gangs in Hell's Kitchen. During this period, under their instigation, several large-scale shopping sprees broke out. These points were contributed by the scum lost in these shopping sprees. Of course, it also includes the points gained from the 2 police officers Shumo killed. The accident involving 2 police officers did not cause much trouble under Shumo's suppression. After all, the USD he gave to the politicians in New York was not just for nothing. Sitting cross-legged on the floor of the room, Shumo found the gene energy cultivation method in his mind and looked at it carefully. In fact, after his strength exceeds 900 kilograms, he can start to cultivate his genetic energy. The reason why he did not practice immediately was because he considered that a warrior would get a huge improvement when he first practices genetic energy, and the stronger the strength, the greater the improvement. However, in that world, without cultivating genetic energy, through exercise, one's strength could reach about 1 ton at most. If you go higher, it will become very difficult. Shumo directly increased his strength to the level of a high-level warrior under the Super Warrior Serum. I don't know how far I will improve in this first practice. At the apprentice level, there are 3 stages: Warrior, General and God of War. Each stage is divided into beginner, intermediate and advanced. From the junior warrior's boxing power reaching 900 kilograms to the intermediate warrior's boxing power reaching 2000 kilograms, the boxing power will be doubled with each subsequent level. The standard for advanced fighters is that their punching power exceeds 4,000 kilograms and their speed exceeds 60 meters per second. After a while, Shumo let out a long breath. He was already familiar with the contents of the secret book. The essence of gene energy cultivation is to absorb the free energy in the universe to strengthen oneself. The first step in cultivation is to feel this energy. According to the method recorded in it, he assumed a posture with 5 hearts pointing toward the sky and slowly closed his eyes. I worked hard to sense it. As time passed, he remained motionless as if the pause button had been pressed. For the first half hour, Shumo didn't feel anything at all. But he was in no hurry. According to the records in the practice, it is very difficult for beginners to feel the energy of the universe, and many people spend a month doing this. Thanks to his calm attitude, it wasn't until an hour later that he entered a wonderful state, in which he could feel a special energy in the air. Feel it. Shumo felt excited. This must be the cosmic energy recorded in the secret book. Pity. In his excitement, he instantly withdrew from that wonderful feeling. But he was not discouraged. After the first time, the rest was easy. Gathering his mind and recalling the previous state, he closed his eyes again. With a high degree of concentration, he entered that state again after a while. Feeling the energy everywhere around him, he recalled the contents recorded in the exercises. The next step is to guide these energies into your body. Thinking of this, his heart moved. The energy around his body seemed to be attracted by his body, slowly gathering towards his body and entering his body. And the influx is coming faster and faster. After the energy enters the body, it disperses towards various parts and is absorbed by the hungry cells in the body. It's as if a long drought brings rain. There was a warm feeling in my body. This feeling of comfort almost made Shumo fall asleep directly. Just when he was immersed in this state, he was in the corridor outside the gym. A figure walked over quickly. It was Wanda, who had just married Shumo. At this time, her face was full of panic. But after arriving outside the gym, Wanda looked at the door in front of her and fell into a tangle. Shumo had previously ordered that no one would be allowed to disturb him after he entered. After Wanda hesitated for a moment, she still didn't knock on the door. Instead, he waited anxiously. 2 hours later, Shumo opened his eyes and slowly stood up from the ground. Along with his movement, there was a crackling sound all over his body. The transparent panel appeared in front of him again. Name: Shumo. Age: 20 years old. Strength: 10,360 kg. Speed: 96 meters s. Ability: none. Points: 512 points. Looking at the columns of strength and speed, Shumo had a look of shock on his face. The first time I practiced, my strength actually more than doubled. The power reaches 10 tons. This has reached the standard of a junior warrior. Not only the strength and speed, but also the body is comprehensively improved. Even perception ability has been improved several times. The flow of air around him, as well as all kinds of small sounds, are all within his perception. The sound of the hands of the clock on the wall moving was like a bell, resounding in his ears. At this moment, his eyes moved, turning to look towards the door. There's someone outside the door. Turn around and come to the door, opening the door. Looking at Wanda, who was standing outside the door and had been waiting for more than 2 hours, her face turned a little pale. Shumo had a look of doubt on his face. Why are you here? Seeing Shumo, Wanda hurriedly walked up, grabbed Shumo's arm with both hands, and her eyes were instantly covered with mist. Something happened to Pete. Hell's Kitchen. In a private building. In a dark room, Peter sat on a chair with a bruised face, and her hands and feet were all tied up at this time. Boss, this is the person I'm talking about. Opposite Peter, a thin black man said with a flattering face to a figure sitting in front of the window. The bald man sitting facing the window moved his body when he heard this and stood up from his seat. It was only then that Peter discovered that the man was nearly 2 meters tall and his body was a bit too strong. The man looked at Peter, who was tied to the chair. Have you checked your identity? Boss, we have checked. This person just came from Western Europe some time ago. It seems that her sister got a lot of money from marrying a rich man. The thin black man on the side quickly stepped forward and explained. As he spoke, he handed a report in his hand to the other party's hand. The tall, bald man looked at the report in his hand seriously. There was a look of shock on his face for a moment. $100 million. That's right, boss, with this money we have all the money we need to hand over this year. After hearing what his subordinate said, Fisk, that is, Kingpin, looked at him appreciatively. Well done. After praising his men, Kingpin came to Pietro. Sir, we are just asking for money. You don't want to lose people before the money is spent, right? Just kill me. If you want money, it's impossible. Pietro, who understood the situation, showed an expression like a dead pig that is not afraid of boiling water. According to his character, he had no intention of accepting the money Wanda gave him. But later I thought that rich people like Shumo rarely stay the same. If Wanda and the two get divorced one day, this can be regarded as leaving a way out for Wanda. From beginning to end, he never touched a penny of the money. In the Manor Villa, Shumo and Wanda were sitting in the living room. Is it possible that the other party went somewhere without signal? No, it's impossible. Wanda was anxious, and her voice was trembling. Growing up, whenever Pete had to leave for something, he would tell me in advance. This would never happen. He will be fine, right? Looking at Wanda's expectant eyes, Shumo could only say a word of comfort. Don't worry, I have sent people to check, and there will be news tomorrow morning at the latest. But obviously, his comfort had no effect. Wanda's mood didn't get much relief. At this time, Shumo's cell phone rang. After the call was connected, Secretary Avril's voice came from inside. Boss, there's news. Half an hour later, a car was heading in the direction of Clinton District. Why don't we call the police? In the car, Wanda asked anxiously. Do you think Pete would still be alive if he called the police? Shumo asked rhetorically. According to the gang's usual style, if the New York police intervened, Pietro would most likely not survive. What's more, the other party is the kingpin who has reached the limit of human beings. He didn't think the police had the ability to save Pietro from the other side. The car stopped 2 streets away from the mafia stronghold he found. Wait for me in the car. Shumo gave Wanda a reassuring look and walked out of the car. After hearing Shumo's words, Wanda's eyes turned red. In the past, they had to rely on themselves for whatever problems they encountered. At this moment, she even felt that marrying the other person was not a bad thing. Looking at Shumo's back, she said with a worried look. Careful, she knew very well that if she followed the past, it would have no other effect except to hold back. When Shumo heard this, he did not turn around and stopped, but waved back. Standing at the door, he reached out and touched a bracelet on his wrist. If he dares to save people by himself, he is naturally confident that he can escape unscathed. Now with his strength as a junior warrior, the threat to him from ordinary firearms is already very small. With his current nerve reaction speed, it is not difficult to dodge bullets. The only thing you need to worry about are those light energy weapons. After all, black technologies are emerging in this world endlessly, and it is not surprising that something that transcends the times appears. But the bracelet on his wrist was prepared for this. It cost him 200 points. This bracelet can autonomously generate an energy shield when attacked. According to the system, even in a nuclear explosion, it can last for 2 seconds. The only pity is that this thing is a one-time consumable. Soon, Shumo came to a building with more than 10 floors. The current power of the mafia is limited to Hell's Kitchen and has not yet developed to the extent of ruling the entire United States. The headquarters is just this low building in front of you. Shumo glanced at the balcony on the 2nd floor, jumped slightly, grabbed the windowsill, turned over and entered the room directly. Oh, buy it. Fake. As soon as he arrived on the balcony, Shumo looked at the 7 or 8 figures entangled in the room. If Kayan doesn't take me with him, everyone will die. The glass door of the balcony opened, and his figure flashed in the room instantly. Points plus 50. Points plus 60. After dealing with several gang members in the room, Shumo opened the door and walked upstairs. With his reaction and speed, when those gang members saw him, they would be killed by him before they had time to speak. Chapter 11. Shumo's action went very smoothly. He was not discovered until he reached the 6th floor. To be precise, all the people who found him have been killed by him. At this time, Shumo entered the 7th floor. I learned from the last gang member I met that those people kidnapped by the Black Hand Gang were imprisoned on this floor. So after entering this lair, Shumo started to look at each room. Not Pietro's total knockout. There is no way around it. If you let the other party run out, I'm afraid your whereabouts will be exposed in less than 2 minutes. After opening a room again, Shumo immediately saw a woman with short hair and tight clothes sliding in from the window of the room on a zipline. After the woman landed, she rolled cleanly and stood up. He looked at Shumo who had just opened the door. Wait until Shumo sees the other person's face clearly. He looked stunned. Black Widow. When Natasha Romanoff saw Shumo, she rushed towards him without stopping. Apparently he regarded Shumo as a mafia gang member. Before Shumo could say anything, a long leg kicked towards his face. He directly stretched out his hand to block the opponent's leg, and then used a little force. Natasha Romanoff's body moved backwards under the huge amounts of force. Afraid of alerting the gangsters in the building, Shumo walked into the room and closed the door. At this time, Natasha Romanoff's figure rushed forward again. With the lesson she just learned, she realized that the person in front of her was so powerful that she had no way to stop him. There were already 2 black sticks in her hands. Pity. Shumo, who had reached the warrior level, had extremely fast nerve reaction speed and movements. Before she could react, Shumo threw her onto the bed in the room. Stop fighting, I'm not a gang member, I just sneaked in like you. Before the other party could stand up from the bed, Shumo hurriedly explained. Natasha Romanoff jumped up from the bed and put away the 2 sticks in her hands after hearing this. She was wondering just now. After the other party saw her, he did not yell, but closed the door. At first, she thought that the other party was confident that he could deal with her, but now she understood. Who are you and what are you doing here? After confirming that the other party was not from a gang, Natasha Romanoff looked at him with confusion. My friend was kidnapped by them, and I'm here to save him. Shumo didn't hide it. Although shield is not a good thing, Natasha Romanoff originally has a strong sense of justice. In this situation, the other party will most likely become a helper rather than an enemy. It seems that the information I got is not wrong. As she spoke, Natasha Romanoff took out an ID. My name is Natasha Romanoff, I'm affiliated with the FBI, and I'm here to investigate the mafia's kidnapping and extortion case. Shumo. After introducing himself, Shumo turned around and walked outside. I advise you to leave as soon as possible, you can't deal with the people here. Before leaving, Shumo still gave the other party some advice. Although Natasha Romanoff's fighting skills are extremely strong, she doesn't have an advantage against Kingpin, whose physical fitness reaches the limit of human beings. It's none of your business. After Natasha Romanoff retorted stubbornly, she followed Shumo out of the room. There aren't many rooms on this floor. Soon, Shumo found Pietro in a room in the corner. Natasha Romanoff has disappeared to nowhere. At this time, Pietro's hands and feet were tied up, and his face was bruised. Apparently he suffered a lot because he refused to hand over the money. Seeing Shumo walking in from the door, Pietro had a surprised look on his face. Why are you here? Of course I'm here to save you. Shumo stepped forward and untied the rope from his body. Just when he was about to take the other person away, the look on his face was stunned. Etc. Thanks to his strong physical fitness, the movement outside the door was clearly transmitted to his ears. In the corridor outside, a group of figures rushed out of the stairs with guns in hand. The door was quickly surrounded. The door was kicked open directly from the outside. Then the gang members who were waiting outside the door fired a burst of fire into the room without hesitation. In an instant, the entire room was enveloped in a layer of smoke. While these people were changing their magazines, a figure suddenly jumped out of the smoke in the room. The figure was like an afterimage, flickering a few times in the corridor. After they stopped, the heads of the gangsters holding guns were all twisted at an incredible angle, and they slowly fell to the ground. Pietro, who rushed out after Shumo, happened to see this scene. At first, there was a look of shock on his face. Then he came closer excitedly. Wow, that's so cool. Shu, is this the legendary kung fu you have? Stop talking nonsense and come with me. Shumo waved his hand and led him downstairs. Pietro was still just an ordinary person, and a stray bullet could kill him, so Shumo decided to send him away first. The two of them walked all the way downstairs. As soon as I walked out of the building, I saw a sturdy bald middle-aged man waiting outside the door. Good. The man clapped his hands and then took off his suit. You are very good at fighting out these men of mine. However, if you want to take someone away, you have to ask me if I agree. Shumo looked at the other party up and down. From the opponent's iconic huge size, he could also guess that the opponent should be the underground overlord of Hell's Kitchen, Kingpin. You leave first and leave this person to me. Tell Pietro the location of Wanda's vehicle. Pietro hesitated for a moment, then nodded and ran towards the street where the car was. Judging from the speed with which Shumo had just dealt with the gunman, it was obvious that Shumo was not an ordinary person. He knew very well that with Shumo's speed, if he didn't take care of himself, no one would be able to keep him. If he stayed here, he would only drag the other party down. No one can leave without my permission. When Kingpin saw Pietro who was about to leave, a cruel smile appeared on his face. Then he flashed and rushed towards Pietro. Although he looks very fat, his movements are extremely fast. However, compared to Shumo, his speed was still far behind. As soon as he moved, Shumo was already in front of him. Your opponent is me. After saying that, Shumo flew up with a kick, bursting with power, and kicked the opponent directly into the opposite building. King Jin, and huge amounts of body shape, directly opened a large hole with a diameter of 2 meters in the wall. Looking inside through the hole, there appears to be a bedroom inside. On the bed in the bedroom, a man and a woman were entangled together, not caring about getting dressed, and fled out of the hole in fear. Pietro, who had just ran a few meters away, heard the sound and looked back. Looking at the big hole in the wall, he muttered with a dull look on his face, "Walter, is this guy Superman wearing underwear? Let's go." Seeing Pietro frozen on the spot, Shumo opened his mouth to remind him. He wasn't sure whether such a blow could kill the opponent. If he didn't leave, he would be easily affected by the next battle between the two. Oh, good. After receiving the reminder, Pietro no longer hesitated and disappeared from the spot. In the building, Jin Bin coughed out a large mouthful of blood. There was a look of horror on the blood-stained face. The blow just now almost broke the ribs in his chest. But even if it is not broken, there should be cracks on it. The internal organs seemed to have received a certain degree of damage from the huge amounts of force. This was the second time he had encountered such a crushing situation besides the mutant monster. Kingpin took a deep breath and used his arm to withdraw a small injection from his cuff. This is a potion developed in his secret laboratory, which can completely stimulate the body's potential and increase physical fitness by 5 to 6 times. However, the current technology is not perfect, and after the effect of the drug wears off, it will cause irreversible damage to the body. I'm afraid that even if I survive, I will have to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. It was originally the trump card he planned to use to resist the mutant, but now he had to use it. Otherwise, I might not even be able to survive tonight. Thinking of this, he did not hesitate and directly inserted the injection into the root of his thigh. Outside the building, Shumo saw that there was no movement inside. Now he walked towards the inside. Judging from the situation of the fight just now, the opponent's strength does not exceed 2 tons. However, being able to train to this extent by relying on ordinary people is already considered a gift. Although the other party was far behind him, Shumo did not take it lightly. He has no intention of letting the other party go. Entering the room, Shumo immediately saw Jin Bing buried beneath the debris. At that moment, Shumo stepped forward and kicked him hard, intending to finish him off here. Seeing that his right foot was about to kick the opponent, a trace of blood red appeared on the surface of Jin Bin's skin buried underneath, and then Jin Bin's body suddenly jumped up from the ground. Dodged Shumo's kick. Seeing that the other party is several times faster than before, Shumo cautiously exited the room. Jin Bin's figure also walked out closely behind. He looked a little scary at this time. All the skin surface turned blood red, and the skin even cracked in some places, and traces of blood slowly flowed out from the wounds. Oops. Shumo immediately realized that the other party must have used some kind of drug that was extremely harmful to him. After all, there are endless black technologies in this world, and it is not unusual for such drugs to appear. Jin Bin, who came out, didn't say anything nonsense, but pounced directly on Shumo. He himself knew very well that the effect of the medicine was limited in time. If he could not kill the other party before the effect of the medicine disappeared, he would be the one who died in the end. Almost instantly, the two figures collided together again. This time it is no longer a completely overwhelming situation like last time. The two were almost evenly matched. Even Jin Bing, who was strengthened by the potion, still suppressed Shumo in terms of strength. Shumo could only rely on being slightly faster than the opponent to fight with him. In terms of combat experience, there is still some gap between him and the opposite Kingpin. After all, less than half a month ago, he was just an ordinary person. It was indeed a bit fanciful to think that in such a short period of time he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Kingpin who had worked hard all the way. Knowing that he might not be able to defeat the opponent with his fists alone, Shumo stretched out his hand, and a weapon made of alloy and similar to the Tang Dao appeared in his hand. The system comes with an unlimited file size storage space. However, this storage space can only store items exchanged in the system. This sword is exactly the weapon he exchanged in the system. It cost 300 points. It is a tier 4 weapon in the Leng Yu series and can withstand the full power of a junior warrior without being damaged. Opposite Jin Bing, looking at the sudden appearance of the sword in Shumo's hand, there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Shumo stepped forward with his sword and struck the opponent fiercely. Seeing that the sword was about to touch Jin Bing's skin, Shumo felt a resistance coming from his hand. The blade of the sword has been firmly controlled by Kingpin. At this time, he was wearing a pair of gloves made of some kind of metal in his hand, which could withstand the slashing of the sword. It was obviously not an ordinary alloy. A cruel smile appeared on Kingpin's face. "It's my turn now." After saying that, he made a fist with his right hand and hit Shumo hard. The sword was caught by the opponent. In desperation, Shumo also made a fist with his left hand and faced it. After a burst of huge amounts of roar, Jin Bing stood there without moving at all, but Shumo's figure tumbled and fell back to its previous position. Looking at his trembling left hand, Shumo had a solemn look on his face. A conservative estimate is that the opponent's strength has reached 12 or 3 tons. Although the skin on the opponent's body is constantly chapped with the movements, depending on the situation, he should still be able to hold on for a long time. Without giving Shumo time to breathe, Jin Bing's figure had appeared in front of Shumo again. The two were entangled again. Huge amounts of roar echoed through the streets. The difference from the last time was that this time the offense and defense were in different positions. It was replaced by Gold and kept attacking Shumo, while Shumo relied on the opponent's strength to keep distance and fight with the opponent. If it wasn't for the sword in Mo's hand that needed to be used all the time, I'm afraid he would have been defeated long ago. This is not the way to go. Shumo's eyes flashed with anxiety. He could feel that with the continuous fighting, his arms were gradually becoming numb under the strength of the other party. If this continues, I'm afraid it won't be long before I can no longer block the opponent's attacks. And when the speed is almost the same as him, it seems a little difficult to escape. The only way now is to practice the first level of Thunder Sword. After completing the first level, his power can be doubled to 20 tons. The current Jinpin's strength does not exceed 15 tons. At this time, two figures ran over from a distance. It wasn't until they got closer that they discovered that these two people were Wanda and Pietro, brother and sister. At this time Pietro was holding a handful of microflush in his hand. Wanda was carrying a Remington shotgun. With her ordinary body, she seemed a little out of breath after running all the way. However, the two of them did not have time to breathe. Instead, they came up to Jin Bing, who had separated from Shumo, and pulled the trigger. After seeing the two of them, Shumo's expression changed. "What are you two doing here again?" He knew very well that the current firearms no longer posed much of a threat to him and Kingpin. "You came here to save me, I can't leave you alone," Pietro explained while resisting the recoil of the gun. Wanda on the side also nodded. He and Wanda had just been hiding in the car in the distance watching the battle. In this way, even if he is discovered by Kingpin, he can control the car and escape in time. However, after seeing Shumo gradually falling into a disadvantage, the two of them couldn't sit still. They took 2 guns from the car and rushed over. After the two of them saw Shumo's speed, they chose firearms based on their ability to hit the target. This is indeed the case. Under the coverage of micro-blast fire and the huge attack range of the shotgun, although Kingpin did not react slowly, he still took several hits in an instant. Although the damage caused to him was not great, the pain successfully angered him. Court death. After letting out an angry roar, Kingpin flashed forward and rushed towards Wanda, who was approaching him. Shumo's expression changed when he saw Jin Bing rushing towards Wanda. "Get away!" He ducked in front of Wanda. The sword in his right hand was swung out with all his strength. In desperation, the first level of the Thunder Sword's force appeared in his mind. A glimmer of understanding emerged in his mind. Naturally, strength surged out of the right hand wielding the sword again. The speed of the sword was directly accelerated by 60%. Jin Bing, who was originally confident that he could block Shumo, had a look of horror on his face after he noticed it. No. In Jin Bing's widened eyes, the sword slashed hard on his neck. Poof! Just like cutting tofu, the sword passed by as lightly as nothing. Jin Bing's expression froze instantly. Then, his head slowly fell to the ground. Kill the villain and get 10,000 points. The system prompts appeared in Shumo's mind. Shumo's eyes lit up as he was immersed in the first level of joy of practicing the Thunder Sword. You are indeed worthy of being the ruler of Hell's Kitchen, worthy of hundreds of minions. Are you okay? At this time, Wanda came forward from behind. When Shumo heard Wanda's voice, his eyes moved, and then his face instantly turned a little pale. His body softened and he was about to fall back. When Wanda saw this, she quickly stretched out her hand to support him. "What's wrong with you?" Shumo fell on top of her, looked at the worried look on her face, and tried his best to smile. "I'm fine, I'm just a little exhausted." Although the system has been activated now, Shumo has not forgotten that chaos force still exists in Wanda's body. It is uncertain when this chaos force will awaken. If the other party suddenly awakens at some point, he is not sure what the other party's attitude will be towards him. He not only threatened the other party before, but also took away the other party's first time. It is obviously impossible to say that Wanda does not hold some grudge against herself. Naturally, he would not give up this great opportunity to increase his favorability. Seeing Shumo going through danger in order to save the two siblings, Wanda also felt a warmth in her heart. "Thanks, I'll help you back." As she spoke, Wanda helped Shumo walk towards the car. At this moment, the sound of explosions came from behind them. A black figure crashed through the window, flew out of the building, and fell to the ground. The three people turned and looked over. Natasha Romanoff covered her back and slowly stood up from the ground. "By God, my back." Before Shumo and the others could figure out the situation, a man stronger than Kingpin walked out of the building. The man wears a metal helmet on his head. Glancing at Jin Bing, who was lying on the ground with his body and head separated, the man's angry eyes fell on Shumo and the other three. "Did you kill this person? If you kill him, where will I collect the money? If you can't receive the money, then..." The man babbled to himself. Seeing this, Shumo turned towards Natasha Romanoff, who was standing aside, and stretched out his hand to make gestures. "That means, where did you provoke this madman?" Natasha Romanoff spread her hands. Obviously, she didn't know where this madman came from. After muttering alone for a long time, the man looked at Shumo and the others again. "Since you have killed him, I will take you back to deal with him." After saying that, the man raised his foot and slammed it on the ground. Boom! At this moment, the entire ground rolled, and there was like an earth dragon rolling in the direction of Shumo and the others. See this scene. Shumo was shocked. "Walk." After saying that, he directly took Wanda and Pietro with one hand and flew away towards the distance. When Natasha Romanoff saw this, her expression changed, and she turned around and fled in the other direction. The man who was wearing a helmet and didn't seem to have a clear mind saw this and chased Shumo in the direction. However, although he can trample the ground like an earthquake with a casual kick, his speed does not seem to match his strength, and it only seems to reach the limit of human beings. Although Shumo brought two people with him, he still quickly got rid of this person. Sitting in the back seat of a commercial vehicle, Shumo let out a sigh of relief. Judging from the destructive power caused by the man just now, the force was at least over 50 tons. Obviously it's not something he can deal with now. He frowned slightly, a look of thought flashing in his eyes. He has a low IQ, great strength, and wears a helmet on his head. From these points alone, Shumo could guess the identity of the other party. The only one who seems to fit these criteria is the red tank who has gained the power of the evil god Cytoric, Kane Marco. But why did the other party appear in Jin Bin's base camp? Recalling what he said before, during this time, Jian Jin and others were crazy about making money through kidnapping and extortion. Kingpin clearly plays for the organization, Brotherhood of Mutants. All he could think about was this organization. After all, Red Tank had only joined a few organizations. This is also the organization most likely to do such a thing. But no matter what organization it is likely that it has been exposed to the other party's sight. Next, I have to improve my strength as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Shumo took out his cell phone and dialed Soren's number. Kingpin is dead, spread the word and cause chaos in the gangs of Hell's Kitchen as soon as possible. Knack Island, about 300 nautical miles away from New York, is a file-sized island of more than 10 square kilometers. The headquarters of the Brotherhood of Mutants is located on this island. Located in a building on the east coast of the island. Red Tank looked at an old man sitting at the top. The old man also wore a metal helmet on his head. His identity is self-evident, he is the famous Magneto. Kingpin is dead. Where's the money? Eric didn't care about Kingpin's death. In his opinion, the other party was just a tool to help them collect dollars. Hearing this, Red Tank's face was stunned. Have no idea. Eric was not surprised by this answer and waved helplessly towards the other party. Forget it, go back and rest first. He knows that the opponent's brain is not normal, but among the current Brotherhood, his ability is still recovering due to the mutant antidote. Only Hong can steadily suppress Jin Bin and is not afraid of the opponent's methods. Tanked. For this purpose, he also sent another mutant to accompany him. Because of what happened at the Golden Gate Bridge last time, after he was injected with the mutant antidote, his ability disappeared. Without him, all surviving members of the Brotherhood are wanted by the government. Like rats in the sewer, hiding here and there. It wasn't until he regained some of his abilities that he reunited these people. Eric turned to look at a girl sitting in the corner playing with the computer. Check it out and find out what's going on. No problem, give me some time. The girl showed a confident smile, and then quickly started typing on the keyboard with her hands. The next period of time. Because of Kingpin's death and the instigation of Sauron and the others, Hell's Kitchen fell into chaos. Every day and night, there are intermittent sounds of gunshots and police cars in this area. However, the government has not taken any measures in this regard. After all, those who died were some gang members from Hell's Kitchen. They really want all those scum to die. This morning, in the Manor Villa, Shumo walked out of the bedroom in a daze. In the living room, Wanda was wearing pajamas and was busy in the kitchen. Hearing the voice behind her, she turned her head and saw Shumo walking out, with a sweet smile on her face. You're awake. Shumo stepped forward and hugged her from behind. Why don't you cook by yourself today? You can just leave these things to the servants. But I want to do it myself. He took Shumo's mischievous hand away, and then glanced at her angrily. Okay, let's go wash up first. Breakfast will be ready soon. All right. Shumo could only leave the kitchen and walk towards the bathroom. Since rescuing Pietro last time, the relationship between the two can be said to have developed by leaps and bounds. Wanda seemed to accept him completely. It has to be said that women like Wanda and others who have lacked love since childhood are particularly easy to be impressed. As long as you give her a good point, she will be eager to repay you with 10 points. What's more, in her opinion, Shumo risked his life to save Pietro. When Shumo returned to the restaurant again, breakfast was already on the table. Looking at the steamed buns and rice porridge on the table, Shumo seemed to have seen a ghost. You did it. Certainly. Wanda tightened her hair. I heard from the servant that you only like to eat Chinese food, so I tried to make some. It's my first time making it and I don't know how it tastes. Looks great. Shumo looked at the other party's sweet smile and praised him. Sure enough, even if we put aside the rewards of the system, if we were to pick out the most suitable person to be a wife from Marvel, it would undoubtedly be Wanda. After all, the other person's lifelong dream is just to have 2 children. The family finds a peaceful and comfortable life in a small town. This point is in line with the Chinese people's definition of a good wife and mother. The most important thing is that the other party is still so approachable. Sitting at the dining table, I picked up a bun and took a bite. Beef stuffing. The taste is surprisingly good. By the way, why haven't you seen Pete during this time? Hearing this, Wanda showed a look of helplessness on her face. He found a job in Queens and rented a house. Now he has to go to work during the day and study the secret book you taught him at night. He hasn't been back for a long time. If I hadn't gone to see him 2 days ago when he visited, I thought he had been kidnapped again. Shumo also felt a little helpless about this matter. Whether it was the money he gave or the house and job he arranged for the other party, Peter firmly refused to accept it. The money was resolutely returned to Shumo after rescuing him. According to his words, it was because he didn't understand Shumo that he accepted the money and wanted to give Wanda a guarantee. But after what happened last time, he had completely trusted Shumo's character. Naturally, this security deposit is not necessary. And he felt that he could support himself without relying on Shumo's help. In this regard, Shumo could only lament that this brother-in-law was quite a good person. I lamented the other party's persistence in Kung Fu. Shumo handed him the gene energy cultivation method and asked him to study it first. After all, There are many Chinese-specific nouns in it, which he needs to slowly understand. He also gave him a large portion of ferocious beast meat to slowly eat to improve his physical fitness. After his strength reaches the level of a quasi-warrior, he can start training directly. But these are alternatives. In contrast, Shumo still preferred to let Wanda and the others follow their original trajectory and awaken their abilities. With origin magic power and extreme speed, the two of them are strong enough to protect themselves. In the gym, Shumo looked at a document in his hand. These are all collected by Sauron during this period, about the situation of various forces in Hell's Kitchen. Under the agitation of their 9 people, almost all gangs have been seriously injured. The members of large gangs have been reduced by at least half, and some small gangs have been directly wiped out. Hell's Kitchen has also ushered in the safest period in more than 10 years. Open the system panel. Look at the points column above. 31,960 points. This is the cumulative number of points earned during this period. Gang members in Hell's Kitchen. In this turmoil, the death toll reached thousands one after another. Because the deaths of these people were indirectly caused by him, the points earned were reduced by a large part. The points have almost stopped increasing in the past 2 days. But these are enough to increase his strength a lot. Open the exchange list of them all. Shumo was dazzled by the various mutant abilities. Storm. Obtain the ability to control celestial phenomena. Points required for redemption, 30,000 points. Teleport. You can teleport to any location you have visited before. Points required for redemption, 30,000 points. Sand transformation. You can control the yellow sand at will. You can also transform yourself into sand, and you are immune to a certain degree of physical attacks. Points required for redemption, 30,000 points. Duplication. Can generate up to 100 duplications. Duplication is controlled by the main body. The damage suffered by the main body can be transferred to duplication. Points required for redemption, 30,000 points. Overwhelming self-confidence. Gain the ability to be extremely confident. You are the only one in heaven and on earth. As a side effect, spikes will grow on your body. Points required for redemption, 100,000 points. Various abilities are good, but mutant abilities are derived from the X gene and are too easy to be restrained. Even if he is as strong as Magneto, he will instantly become an ordinary person after being shot by the mutant antidote. Compared with mutant ability, the power gained through practice is different. There is no need to be afraid of being restrained, and the upper limit is much higher than the ability of these mutants. After browsing for a while, Shumo's eyes moved. Spiritual core. Can be integrated into the mind, release mental power independently, and be promoted to the master of the god's telekinesis. The mental power contained in it can enable the host to reach the peak of the God of War level. Points required for redemption, 30,000 points. That's it. In an instant, Shumo made a decision. After deducting 30,000 points, a dark golden ball appeared in his hand. Spherical soybeans file size, looks like an illusion. Following the system prompts, Shumo touched the ball to the center of his eyebrows. In an instant, the ball disappeared in his hand. Shumo felt a sharp tingling sensation in his mind. I felt dizzy. When Shumo appeared again, he was already standing in a vast white space. Not far in front of you, a file-sized black tower was slowly rotating. It was the star tower that you had obtained earlier. Conscious space, Shumo guessed. After all, he had watched the star tower sink into the center of his eyebrows with his own eyes before. At this time, he also noticed that the dark golden ball that had just disappeared was floating above the star tower. Before he could figure out the situation, the dark golden ball seemed to be stimulated, gradually accelerating its rotation, and large amounts of dense air continued to emanate from the ball. Psychic power. From the systematic explanation, we know that the amount of mental power released by the mental protonucleus has a great relationship with one's own physical strength. His current warrior strength is that of a junior warrior. The strength of the god's telekinesis master is at most 2 levels higher than that of a warrior. In other words, now the spiritual core can directly release spiritual power, raising the strength of his master to the level of a high-level warrior. After only pausing in the conscious space for a moment, Shumo's consciousness returned to his body. As soon as he returned to his body, severe pain was like a tide, instantly flooding his consciousness. After gritting his teeth and holding on for less than a quarter of an hour, Shumo rolled his eyes and fainted. After he fainted, the release of energy from the dark golden ball in his mind did not stop, and it was still rapidly increasing his mental power. I don't know how much time passed. The speed at which the mental core in his mind releases mental power has slowed down and gradually become stable. Shumo also slowly opened his eyes after trembling his fingers. I fainted. Wait, this is it. There was a look of surprise on his face. There was no other reason. At this time, all the disturbances within a radius of 100 meters clearly appeared in his mind. Shumo could clearly see the textures on the wings of the servants who cleaned the villa, Wanda who planted the plants in the garden, and even the butterflies flying among the flowers. This feeling is so wonderful. It was as if the world was under his control. Of course, he also knew that this was just his illusion. Withdrawing his perception, Shumo focused his gaze on a dumbbell on the shelf opposite him. Something moved in my heart. The dumbbell seemed to be grasped by a pair of invisible hands and floated slowly. Is this psychokinesis? Next, Shumo's eyes scanned the various machines in the gym, and the machines he scanned floated one by one. Until half a minute later, the gym seemed to be in space, and all the equipment in the room, even the treadmills and bench presses, were floating. Until this moment, Shumo still felt at ease. Open the properties panel. After putting these things back in their place, Shumo thought silently in his heart. Name: Shumo. Age: 20 years old. Strength: 15,360 kg. Speed: 118 meters s. Psychokinesis: 61,600 kg. Ability: none. Points: 1960 points. First, the physical strength increased from 10 tons to 15 tons. Looking at it this way, the improvement of mental strength will also lead to the improvement of physical fitness. Shumo had expected this and didn't show much surprise on his face. Until his eyes fell on the column of telepathy. 61 tons. Seeing this number, Shumo's eyes showed shock. This is already more than 4 times the physical strength. You must know that the early strength standard of the god of war was only 64 tons. Now he is not too far away from this. After taking a long breath, Shumo gradually calmed down. Became a master of the god's telekinesis. If he faced the red tank from last time again, he was confident that he would be able to kill the opponent effortlessly. After all, masters can fly. Although psychokinesis has no way of affecting the physical body, it can fly by stepping on a weapon. Thinking of this, Shumo opened them all again and planned to choose some weapons. But after only watching for a moment, he closed them all with an ugly expression. There is no way, it is too expensive. With his current points, he can't even buy a few throwing knives with the minimum materials. Now his mental psychokinesis is very close to the primary god of war. Therefore, for weapons, you need to purchase at least 7 series throwing knives. A 7 series flying knife requires 500 points, and a 9 series flying knife that can reach the peak of the god of war requires 1000 points. With all the points he has now, he can't buy 2. With his current strength, he can control 4 flying knives at the same time while ensuring accuracy. These alone cost 4000 points. It's not that low-level flying knives cannot be used, but when he uses all his strength, they will be easily damaged and become disposable items. Just imagine that 60 tons of power are concentrated on a flying knife. If the material is not enough, I am afraid that it will be scrapped if it touches something with high hardness, etc. Shumo suddenly thought of something and asked about the system in his mind. If the vibranium and adamantium in this world are cast into flying knives, how many series would they be equivalent to? 9 series. The system's emotionless voice sounded in Shumo's mind. Hearing this answer, Shumo's eyes lit up. Brotherhood headquarters. A group of people walked into a circular hall pushing a box that was more than 2 meters high. The hall was surrounded by mutants. Eric Magneto stepped down from a seat directly in front of him. He reached out and brushed against the outer wall of the box. Here are all the US dollars that the Kingpin collected during this period. That's right. A young man with yellow hair who walked in with the box nodded. Then press a switch on the box. The box opened slowly. It was neatly filled with US dollars. These total $500 million. Not enough, far from enough. Magneto. Eric looked at the pile of USD that was almost piled up in front of him. He was unmoved and instead spoke with a gloomy look. We are still far short of the funds needed to complete our plan. At this point, Eric was stunned. He turned to look at the hacker girl in the crowd. It seems that the man who killed Kingpin last time was also a rich man. The hacker girl nodded when she heard this. I tapped a few times on the computer in my hand, and then called up a piece of information. Shu Mo, CEO of Fox Film and Television Company, is also the second largest shareholder of Stark Group. He has shares in almost all of the well-known companies in the United States, but he sold them all some time ago. Despite this, the total assets under his name are worth more than $100 billion. After hearing the girl's words, people around them exclaimed in surprise. Most of these mutants come from the bottom of society. Naturally, they are very shocked when they hear this huge number. There was a smile on Magneto's face. As long as we have each other's support, we no longer have to worry about funding. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and a pair of metal knives and forks flew out from somewhere in the room, stopping on top of his palm and spinning slowly. I think the other parties should be very willing to support our mutant cause. Of course, all this needs to wait until my ability is fully restored. African coast. Salva Giant Marina. In a dismantling yard where dilapidated ships are parked. A helicopter landed slowly. Shu Mo walked out of the helicopter wrapped tightly and looked at the ship with dense gunshots in the distance with confusion. Someone got there first. This is where Ultron obtained the vibranium. And the black market businessman here, Ulysses, has vibranium smuggled from Wakanda. It is also currently the easiest place to obtain vibranium. In fact, when it comes to making weapons, adamantium is more suitable than vibranium. Vibranium has the effect of buffering kinetic energy and is more suitable as a material for making armor. Adamantium is indestructible and is the best material for making weapons. As for throwing knives, adamantium is of course more suitable. Unfortunately, the adamantium formula has disappeared along with Stryker's Yakley base. It is not easy to find it. Shu Mo can only settle for the next best thing and choose vibranium. Thinking of this, Shu Mo did not hesitate, his figure flashed and flew towards the ship. Inside the ship at this time, the short Ulysses, protected by his men, looked at a middle-aged man in the distance with fear. The middle-aged man's palm had transformed into two huge amounts of tiger claws. Drops of blood dripped from the tips of the claws. Behind him, two bodies were lying on the ground. The man also had several bloody holes on his body. But as time goes by, the wounds on his body were healing rapidly, and the bullets in the wounds were also squeezed out, followed by the sound of a dense burst of bullets falling to the ground. The wounds on the man's body have recovered as before. Mutants. Seeing this situation, Ulysses quietly took a few steps back, glanced at the gunmen around him, and gained some sense of security in his heart. I think I have made it very clear. If you want vibranium, just pay for it. The mutant opposite obviously refused to accept this suggestion. The lowered head gradually lifted up, staring at Ulysses with beast-like eyes. Seeing this look, Ulysses immediately realized that the person on the other side obviously didn't seem to be able to communicate. Then he waved his right hand. Kill him. After giving the order, Ulysses turned around and retreated back. The surrounding gunmen pressed the triggers in their hands. A dense storm of bullets swept through. When the smoke cleared, the mutants had disappeared. In a room on the ground floor of the ship, Ulysses held a pistol and listened to what was going on outside. There are also several gunmen guarding the room. This room contains all the vibranium he has stolen from Wakanda over the past few years, worth more than $1 billion. It is obviously impossible for him to let such a large amount of wealth be snatched away by the other party. Wait until the gunfire outside stops. There was a look on his face. Dead. Waving to a subordinate on the side, the gunman clenched his pistol and walked towards the door, intending to go out and investigate. But he just walked to the door. Boom. There was an explosion, and the door flew straight in. The gunman who was just about to go out was knocked to the ground by the alloy door panel. Blood flowed from his 7 orifices, and it seemed that he would not survive. Ulysses dodged the door panel and looked towards the door. The person standing outside the door was the mutant just now. After a burst of gunfire. Then Ulysses felt a heat on his neck, and the other party's bloody claws were already on it. Several gunmen around them covered the bloody holes in their bodies and slowly fell to the ground. Vibranium. Leave it to me. The mutant man let out a beast-like roar, and Ulysses had no doubt that if he didn't hand over the vibranium, the other party would slit his neck in the next moment. Wait, I'll give it. Ulysses hurriedly pressed a button on the wall behind him. Enter your password on the keyboard that appears. A metal door slowly opened on both sides, and an elevator-like device descended from inside. Placed above are pieces of vibranium in transparent glass containers. All the vibranium is here, a total of 136 kilograms. Seeing the vibranium, the mutant pushed Ulysses away. Ulysses hurriedly left from the door. The mutant man ignored the other party, but stepped forward to check it, then put the vibranium into a bag and walked outside. Just walked to the door. A figure fell from the sky and hit the ground hard. Looking at the scene in the cabin, Shumo let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's not too late. He glanced around the room and was stunned when he saw the mutant's weathered face and his hands that turned into giant claws. As the wounds on the man's body recovered quickly, several bullets were discharged from the wounds. Saber-toothed tiger. A name came to his mind. With this appearance, coupled with this powerful self-healing ability, Shumo guessed the identity of this mutant in an instant. Why is he here? After a brief moment of confusion, Shumo was relieved. This was a real world. Red tanks could get together with Kingpin. It seemed that there was nothing surprising about saber-toothed tigers appearing in this place. Get out of the way. Staring at Shumo who was standing in front of him, the saber-toothed tiger made a deep sound from his mouth. See the other person's eyes that don't contain any emotion. Control, Shumo guessed. Thinking of this, he didn't intend to talk nonsense to the other party. The figure disappeared in a flash. The saber-toothed tiger felt his eyes blur. Before he could react, a black fist as big as a sandbag had appeared in front of him. A huge force came. The saber-toothed tiger only felt numbness on his face, and then his body became like a rocket, knocking through several layers of steel plates and then lifted into the air. Strong physical fitness, coupled with super self-healing ability that is not afraid of firearms. Compared to ordinary people, Victor, the saber-toothed tiger, is almost unsolvable. But unfortunately he met Shumo. Shumo's strong physical fitness is simply not enough in the face of Shumo's more than 30 tons of strength after the amplitude bonus and the speed of more than 100 meters per second. Ulysses led his group of gunmen to the door of the room, and happened to see the scene in front of him, with a look on his face. Who are you? Shumo ignored the other party, but stepped forward, picked up the bag left by the saber-toothed tiger on the ground, and opened it to take a look. After confirming that it was indeed what he wanted, a smile appeared on his face. Hey man, that's my thing, give it back to me. Ulysses saw Shumo's actions and said quickly. Judging from the other party's actions, it was obvious that they were also targeting vibranium. Give it back to you. I robbed it based on my ability, why should I give it back to you? Shumo said confidently. Hearing this, Ulysses was speechless for a moment. Man, you don't seem to be able to understand the situation in front of you. I advise you to be more knowledgeable. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the guns in the hands of these men were pointed at Shumo. If you know what's going on, put down what you're holding. Shumo turned around slowly after hearing this and glanced at the group of people. In addition to vibranium, these people are also of great use to him. After all, these are all points. Just when Shumo was about to take action. Boom! The figure of the saber-toothed tiger Victor jumped out from the side. He rushed towards Shumo. Roll! Shumo raised his foot and kicked the opponent away. Like a sandbag, Victor flew directly into the cabin on the side. In less than 2 seconds, the other party jumped out again. Look at the other party still alive and kicking. Shumo shook his head. Self-healing ability is indeed a bit troublesome, but do you think there's nothing you can do about it? But before he could take action again, Ulysses, who was being ignored, showed an angry look on his face. His right hand waved violently. Everyone fire at me. After receiving his order, the group of men looked at the 2 people standing in the distance and were a little at a loss. The deputy standing next to him hesitated for a moment, and then asked in a low voice. Boss, which one to fight? Ulysses slapped him angrily. Of course I'll beat them both, and they'll all die. After receiving his order, the gunmen under his command no longer hesitated and pulled the triggers one after another. In an instant, there was loud gunfire, and the cabin became filled with smoke. The bullets fired at Shumo all hovered in the air less than 1 meter away from him. Victor, on the other hand, instantly had more than a dozen bloody holes on his body. The irritated Victor let out an angry roar, gave up his silence, and rushed towards the gunman. When Shumo saw this, he came first and stopped in front of Victor. "If you want to steal my head, get out of here." The right fist struck Victor in the face, and at the same time 4 flying knives flew out from his back. Under the influence of telekinesis, they turned into an afterimage and shuttled through the cabin. The moment his right hand touched Victor's skin, the 2 forces of gravity are naturally transferred from the arm to the fist, and are superimposed together. 30 tons of power instantly exploded on Victor's face. Boom! Victor's face exploded directly in Shumo's hands. Under the huge amounts of power, the figure disappeared in a flash and disappeared into the cabin in the distance. After the flying knife on the other side entered the crowd. Those gunmen were like cutting wheat, and a large piece fell down in a moment. Points plus 80 points. Points plus 60 points. The system prompts kept ringing in Shumo's ears. Less than 10 seconds, the people around them all fell to the ground, and blood flowed out from the wounds on their necks, dyeing the ground red. The flying knife without a trace of blood was suspended next to Shumo. These flying knives were made of titanium alloy by Shumo, and they were more than enough to deal with these ordinary people. Shumo walked up to the only survivor present, Ulysses. Ulysses had been so frightened by the hellish scene around him that he collapsed to the ground. "Devil, you are a devil. Thank you for the compliment. As a thank you, I'll send you to reunite with your men." After saying that, Shumo stretched out his hand to strangle the other person's neck and gently exerted force. Crack. Kill the villain and get 2,000 points. Open the system panel and check it out. After clearing out all these arms dealers, the points have accumulated to more than 6,000 points. In other words, in less than a minute, nearly 5,000 points were obtained. Close the panel. Shumo walked towards the saber-toothed tiger that had just been knocked away. Although his face exploded directly under the blow just now. But judging from his previous resilience, this was nothing to the saber-toothed tiger. Sure enough, the other party was no longer in the cabin. The other party seemed to realize that there was no benefit in his hands and ran away directly. Shumo, who had expected it, did not panic, picked up the vibranium in the cabin and left directly. After returning to the helicopter, Shumo took out a tablet. After some operations above, a map appears on the screen. 2 light spots, one red and one blue, kept flashing on the map. The red dot is exactly where he is. The blue dot is the location of the saber-toothed tiger. At the beginning of the fight, Shumo had already placed a pocket locator on Victor's body. You can see it from before. It seems that the more powerful people you kill, the more points you get. Ordinary people only have a few dozen points at most. An extremely powerful person like Kingpin can stand up to hundreds of nearly ordinary people. It can be seen from the dull expression of the saber-toothed tiger before that the opponent is probably controlled by a mutant with psychic ability. There aren't many mutants with mind control abilities. Those who can control the saber-toothed tiger are even rarer. And it is obvious that anyone who can do such a thing cannot be a decent person. This means that after killing the opponent, he can get a large amount of points. Of course, the most important thing is, there is a star tower in the consciousness sea, and he can almost be regarded as the nemesis of these mind-controlling mutants. Soon, he saw the blue dot on the tablet moving at a sudden speed, then leaving the African continent at a very fast speed and moving in the direction of the United States. Shumo's private plane also took off a few minutes later. He chased in the direction the blue dot left. A few hours later, the blue dot on the tablet stopped. Shumo looked at the location of the blue dot. Located in a mountain range in Florida. In order to prevent being discovered by the radar of the opponent's aircraft, Shumo's private plane had just entered the airspace of the United States. However, Shumo had no plans to take a private plane there. The private jet lands at the nearest airport. Half an hour before the plane landed, Shumo had already left the plane. Outskirts of the Appalachian Mountains. A plane slowly landed on a platform halfway up the mountain. After a while, the saber-toothed tiger and a middle-aged man walked down from above. The two walked to the mountain wall of the platform, and an alloy door of huge amounts embedded in the mountain wall slowly opened. After entering the interior, after passing through a long corridor, there is a huge amount of laboratory. The walls around the laboratory are all made of glass. Behind the glass are small cells-like cells. In each room, there is a strange-looking mutant imprisoned. These mutants were tied to a metal operating table, and almost all of them were surrounded by several figures in white coats. Most of the mutants are in a coma and do not know whether they are alive or dead. The only few mutants who remained awake had a hint of hollowness and numbness in their eyes. The two of them passed through countless alloy doors, standing in front of an old man in his 50s or 60s. What? Failed? The old man looked at the two people standing in front of him with anger on his face. Waste, what a waste, you can't even handle this little thing. Sorry, Dr. Phil. Facing the other party's anger, the middle-aged man apologized quietly, while the saber-toothed tiger standing beside him had a dull look on his face. Seeing the dull look on the saber-toothed tiger's face, Dr. Phil became even more angry. When he stepped forward, there was a flurry of punches and kicks. It wasn't until I felt some soreness in my fist that I gradually stopped. Panting, he sat down aside. There is no way to transfer the self-healing factor into my body without the equipment built by adamantium. No, we must be able to find replacement metal. With that said, he stood up and walked towards the laboratory. Before Phil could walk out of the room, a piercing alarm sounded in the room. His expression changed and he turned to look at the surveillance screen on the wall. Suddenly, he saw a tightly wrapped figure descending from the sky on the top of the mountain where the base was located. It's him, it's him. The middle-aged man standing aside tremblingly looked at the familiar figure in the surveillance screen and let out a scream. After hearing this, Phil was not surprised but happy. You mean, vibranium is in his hands? That's right. The middle-aged man nodded. He was the one who took away the vibranium after injuring the saber-toothed tiger. Phil's eyes lit up. You are so courageous. You stole the vibranium and then you dare to follow me. Hearing this, the middle-aged man also reacted and looked towards the saber-toothed tiger. After a while, he found a soybean file-sized locator from his pocket. There was a look of horror on his face. I'm sorry, doctor, it was my negligence. No, Phil shook his head. You did great. After speaking, he pressed a button on the wall. In an instant, a piercing siren sounded throughout the base. A soldier with a gun in his hand poured out from various rooms in the base and all gathered towards the entrance of the base. Outside, Shumo, who landed on the top of the mountain and was gradually approaching the entrance of the base, immediately saw the soldiers rushing out of the base. Discovered. Seeing the soldiers gathering quickly, Shumo reacted immediately. Now that he was discovered, he was too lazy to hide and seek with the other party. A thought came to my mind. The soldiers who had just ran out of the door immediately felt an irresistible force coming from the firearms in their hands, and the firearms flew out of everyone's hands in an instant. Then the guns were lined up like soldiers. They were neatly arranged in the air, their guns pointed at their previous owners. Seeing this scene, those soldiers instantly lost their souls. Without hesitation, he turned around and ran back. However, their speed is obviously too slow. Just as he turned around, the triggers of those firearms seemed to be pressed. Da da da. Intense gunfire echoed in the corridor, mixed with screams. After the magazines in the firearms were emptied, the armed forces in the entire base were almost wiped out. Shumo then entered the base. 4 flying knives flew out from behind him and hovered around his body. The researchers who had long known that the base had been invaded all transformed into combat units, each holding a gun and aiming at the door. As the sound of footsteps got closer and closer, Shumo stepped into the laboratory. As soon as he entered, he glanced through the transparent glass around the laboratory and looked at the mutants as experimental subjects in the back room. Research on mutants in vivo. Shumo frowned and looked at the researchers in the distance with a cold look in his eyes. When the researchers saw Shumo walking in, they pulled the trigger almost simultaneously. Unfortunately, Shumo's reaction was not slow either. Psychokinesis loomed over the group of researchers. The moment the opponent pressed the trigger, the muzzles of their pistols seemed to be squeezed by some force and converged toward the center. In an instant, the sounds of exploding barrels sounded one after another. Screams came from the room. At the same time, the flying knives hovering around Shumo flew towards the people lying on the ground. In less than half a minute, the room became quiet. This scene clearly appeared on the surveillance camera on the wall of Phil's office. Dr. Phil stood there with a dull expression. Magneto. Impossible, absolutely impossible. There was a look of disbelief on his face. No matter in terms of height or body shape, the other person doesn't look like Magneto. Moreover, as far as he knew, Magneto seemed to have lost his mutant ability. Ordinary people may not know much about it, but to them, the fact that Magneto was injected with the mutant antidote is not a secret. The devil, it must be the devil. At this time, the middle-aged man who was still in the room fell to the ground with a thud and let out a scream. This cry actually woke Dr. Phil up. Shut up. After scolding the other party, he turned around and went to the back of the office, took out a small suitcase from the safe in the corner, got up and fled towards the back of the base. The situation is obvious now. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave. When he reached the door, he turned his head and gave an order to the saber-toothed tiger. Follow me. After that, he and the saber-toothed tiger left together. He tried his best to obtain the self-healing factor in the saber-toothed tiger's body, so naturally he would not abandon him. The middle-aged man paralyzed on the ground also reacted at this time. He quickly got up from the ground using his hands and feet. Doctor, take me away. With that said, he chased after the other party in the direction he left. Roll. After a gunshot, the middle-aged man fell in a pool of blood. At this time, there was no one visible in the base near the entrance. Shumo entered the base. He just glanced around briefly. Could this be a secret base of Hydra? The various researchers and well-equipped soldiers in the base allowed Shumo to come up with this guess. There is no pause. He dodged directly and rushed towards the depths of the base. After seeing everything in the base, Shumo also realized that his previous guess was obviously not accurate. This is obviously a secret organization that studies mutants. His whereabouts have been exposed, and coupled with the destruction of the armed forces in the base, in this case, the person in charge of the base is likely to choose to escape. They must be intercepted before the other party escapes. Less than half a minute. Shumo followed the passage to a small platform at the back of the mountain range. On the platform at this time, the saber-toothed tiger stood in front of a zipline extending toward the foot of the mountain. In the distance, someone seemed to be hanging on the zipline and rowing downwards. Seeing the saber-toothed tiger who also had the hook hanging on his body and was about to leave, Shumo thought. No matter how hard the saber-toothed tiger exerted himself, the zipline would not move at all. Until then, the saber-toothed tiger also noticed Shumo appearing behind him. After letting out a roar, the saber-toothed tiger tore off the hook on his body and rushed towards Shumo. Having discovered the opponent's lair, Shumo naturally had no intention of letting him offend again. Moreover, the owner of the base is fleeing quickly, and he has no time to delay here. Twice the power. Spiritual psychokinesis blessing. With his right hand wearing a metal glove, he made a fist and smashed it towards the opponent. Mental psychokinesis has no way to act on the physical body, and will penetrate directly after contacting the physical body. To facilitate the blessing of psychokinesis and flight, he specially built a suit made of metal. The physical strength is 15 tons, twice the force is 30 tons, plus 61 tons of mental psychokinesis blessing. At this moment, the power of his right fist was close to 100 tons. The moment he punched, a burst of huge amounts of air echoed on the platform. The fist struck the saber-toothed tiger's body as fast as lightning. The saber-toothed tiger paused, and his body paused in the air as if a pause button had been pressed. Immediately afterwards, his body exploded instantly like a punctured balloon. Points plus 12000. The voice of the system sounded in his mind. But he didn't have time to check. He jumped up and chased in the direction of the zip line. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.